Well, there are a number of key drivers affecting future global water demands. Probably the key one to begin with is the size of the human population, because that influences both the quantity of demands for food and for energy, but also the nature of those demands. And it's been recognised that water is critical for food and energy production, and so people talk about the food, water, energy nexus. And the point of this is to emphasise how interlinked water, food and energy are. And they're all essential for human livelihoods, but any change in one of them will affect the others. So for example, any change in the food production system or the way we produce energy will have an impact on water resources. And if there's any change in water resource availability, then that affects food production and energy. So quite a relevant example of that is the drive towards more renewable energy production in order to reduce reliance on fossil fuels. So one of the renewable energy methods that's been promoted is the growth of biofuel crops, but there's been quite a lot of concern that this crop growth diverts water use for food production to energy production, so that illustrates how they're all interlinked. Another example of the water, energy, food nexus is that as the affluence of society increases, so its food consumption patterns change, and typically people tend to consume more meat as they become wealthier, which requires more water to produce the meat compared to a more vegetable-based diet. The other change in society that may take place is that people bathe more frequently, take more baths or showers as affluence increases, which will also increase the pressure on water resources. Linked into this water resource use is the international trade in products containing embedded water, such as food or industrial products, which all require water to produce them. We often tend to overlook this embedded water in products traded. And a concept called water footprinting is used to try and quantify this embedded water. Examples of this virtual water transfer could be the demand in winter in the UK for green beans can be satisfied by the growth of green beans in Kenya, which require water resources in Kenya to produce, but actually that water is consumed in the UK with the imported green beans. Another example of international trade in water is the movement of cloth for jeans. So every pair of jeans that we buy could be affecting water resources in Uzbekistan or India, where the cotton is grown in order to make our pairs of jeans. It's important to remember that these are very complex issues, because this water use, although it may be having impacts in other countries, it is also linked to local livelihoods. So we need to be careful in sort of thinking about not just water resources, but livelihoods and development needs. And water footprinting has been criticised because of all the assumptions that underlie it. So it's not a perfect concept, but it is a good first step to think about the international dimensions of water resource use, and it also raises awareness amongst consumers of the impacts of their behaviours on water resources in other parts of the world. So going back to the key factors affecting global water demand, other factors as well as human population are politics and climate change. So climate change, which is ongoing and will occur in the future, has many, many effects on the quantity and quality of water resources. Amongst the examples of impacts include long-term reduction in water resource availability from meltwater from glaciers as they retreat and maybe eventually disappear in mountains in the tropics, to effects such as salinisation of coastal aquifers as sea levels rise. So climate change has many possible impacts. Linked into this is potential reductions in quality of water resources as human populations increase, and there's increased sewage disposal or fertiliser application to agricultural land in order to produce enough food. And any reductions in the quality of water resources will reduce also the amount of water available for human use of the appropriate quality. The final thing I wanted to talk about was political influences on water resources use and availability. To give an example of this, for food security reasons, some countries may choose to continue unsustainable use of water resources in order to produce the food within their borders, even though they might be using a fossil aquifer which contains waters created maybe tens of thousands or million years ago, but which aren't being replenished now. So some countries in the Middle East or Arabian Peninsula may choose to use these unsustainable water resources for short-term food production in order to maintain their own food security. And linked into this can be a reluctance amongst countries to share transboundary water resources within the same river basin. So a country may choose to develop within it less efficient water resource schemes in order to maintain control over its own water supply. However, there are some examples of cross-border river basin organisations in which countries work together to jointly finance water resource schemes to share the benefits across all partner countries. And an example of this is in West Africa, the Senegal River Basin Commission. And in fact, a World Bank report in 2010 suggested that where you did have international treaties for sharing water or river basin commissions such as these sharing water resources between countries, is that these areas would be more resilient to water variability which might be caused by climate change. So there appear to be real tangible benefits for water resource security in countries cooperating to manage water resources together.